What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It's time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. My name is TJ Zwarich. I'll be your host for today, like always, editor-in-chief of agentsofandom.com, joined as always by my good friend, the lovely, the kind, the beautiful Garrett Blaney. How are you doing?
Wow, that is probably nicer than I should ever be introduced in the future. But I'm great now after that. Hard to be down after one of your best friends says some crazy nice things to you like that. And got another one of my best friends on the pod here today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite shows on TV right now. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Introduce him for us, because that was such a lovely way to lead into it. And so I'm going to let you take it away here, friend.
You know, I'm sitting with technically four of my best friends in the entire world right now. One, of course, our producer, Adam. And then our lovely guest today, one of my best friends, one of my best international friends and best friends. But we got from the UK all the way across the pond, Mo from Streamer. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very good, and that's, again, too nice of an introduction for me. I think
I had to continue the trend.
We're close acquaintances for sure.
We'll go with that.
One of my absolute favorite acquaintances and industry colleagues. Make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom on all the socials, at Agents Fandom on Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. If you want more coverage of the show we're talking about today, The Mandalorian, they're talking about it on the Fandom Academy podcast, where, of course, our producer Adam Blevins was the guest for this past week. And we also talked about the latest Marvel and DC news on the Listen 3000 podcast, talked about the latest in reality TV, what's going on with the Housewives on the Ticket to Reality podcast. And then, of course, we were last night on the Salam Nerd podcast talking Mandalorian as well. So make sure you check those out. But it's time for the Agents of Analysis. Spoiler warning for episode 3 of The Mandalorian, season 3, episode 3. This one was a little bit polarizing. Some people loved it, some people not so much. I liked the story. The format kind of caught me off guard. First one I want to throw to quick is Adam, because he's got a review up on agentsfandom.com. He's covering each of these episodes weekly. Adam, what did you think about this third, if you want to kind of summarize your article, and then also how does it compare to you in comparison to the first two?
I just want to cut in real quick, and I said this on the Salam Nerds podcast last night, but since we've already brought it up so early on into the episode, I just want to say the Mind Flayer has been rebranded to the 602 Mitigator. We no longer use the old branding. We now use the new branding. So it is only the 602 Mitigator, not the Mind Flayer. Proceed.
Now, before we proceed, Garrett, I am curious, is that due to the harsh name, and we don't want to convince people that their mind will be flayed. We wanted to ease them into it a little bit. Or is this due to a copyright issue with Stranger Things?
I'm not gonna lie. There's a couple reasons. There are a couple reasons. We don't need to get into them, but it's more than two. There's more than two reasons. I'll say that.
All right, fair enough. Let's start diving into this episode. Mo, I want to throw it to you next because I know you enjoyed this one a lot more than Adam did. Talk to me about your thoughts on episode 3.
Yeah, so I don't like Star Wars. As like I go into Star Wars, any Star Wars thing, with like below zero expectations, and I always still come out I come out very satisfied because my expectations were right. So when I went into this, I had like sub-zero. I was like, this is not going to be good. It's going to be an hour of stupid world building stuff and traveling to this planet and that planet and just trying to name a bunch of people and go really eccentric. And it just wasn't that, which I really liked. And for the the main storyline stuff of the Mandalorian, there was so much of plot development without there necessarily being a lot of them at the center of it. But I thought it did a good job of tying up a loose end, which kind of like signifying that storyline from the first 2 seasons isn't going to carry on any further past this point, or if it does, it's going to be with respect to it's not going to be Dr. Pershing. It's only going to be a Moff Gideon thing. So I thought that was handled really nicely, and I also really like the world building on Coruscant. I thought that was quite it was just cute, as opposed to it being like super political, even though it was at the end. But yeah.
I think there's definitely a lot of good stuff that happened in the episode, but overall, it's like you can cook a dish that has separately a bunch of great ingredients that together just don't really mesh, and that's kind of for me how it was. And I think it's pretty telling that Mo, I love you, but you don't like Star Wars. So it's telling that someone who I would say that you're not just someone who doesn't like Star Wars, but you pretty actively don't like Star Wars. So for someone who pretty actively doesn't like Star Wars to be pretty gung ho about this episode, and then 3 people who are fairly gung ho about Star Wars and The Mandalorian are fairly middling in their reviews of the episode. That's not to say anything, but it's interesting to me. That's worth noting, I would say.
That's one of the reasons why this ended up being timed so perfectly too. And it's because we're typically so rah, 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 this is great. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because we're talking about things that we love. Perfect. It makes sense. And so this worked out so perfectly that I'll get more to my thoughts after. I'm kind of in the middle here, but it worked out kind of perfectly where we're yeah, it was fine that Mo's able to be no, this was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
That's exactly what I'm kind of saying. I'm glad that you're going to be able to point out things that to our bias were, because I think there are good things in this episode, whereas overall I'm not a huge fan. I think there's a lot of good things to point out. So I think that you're going to be very helpful in doing that. Whereas maybe someone like Adam, who's on the other end of the spectrum, who editing his article had some thoughts, and I think TJ and I are more in the middle. So I think we have a really fun spectrum for this episode, but I do think it's definitely really telling, that we love Star Wars and it's are pretty easy to please, and we're on opposite sides of the spectrum on this.
At times it's just hey, right, give me my space daddy with his cute little child, and I'm happy. Garrett, I think you brought up a great point when we were live yesterday about the build up was so hype that if the transition to another storyline might not have been as jarring if the build up at the beginning of the episode with Bo-Katan and Mando, of course, returning to their group to kind of, hey, I bathed in my living waters, I'm redeemed, etc., etc. Having said that, for me, this episode of The Mandalorian was the season of Book of Boba Fett. And I don't even necessarily mean that in a bad way, because I'm a Book of Boba Fett apologist. I liked Book of Boba Fett. When it transitioned to Mando, I wasn't like, hey, where's my Book of Boba Fett story? I was like, yeah, Mando was so good, woo! And so I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that one bit, and so that's kind of how I felt about this one as well. The first bit of it, I was sitting there like, all right, when are we going to go back and forth? We typically go back and forth. We don't just stay with this new thing for this long. And I agreed with Adam's point, and I still kind of do, but I agreed with it completely initially of like, this story would have been a lot better spread out. Give this to us like show us parts of it, leave, show us parts of it, leave, and have this spread out over 3 to 4 episodes. And while from an enjoyment standpoint, I still think I'd like that better, I do kind of have to wonder of, did we need to know this already now before the next episode starts? Because in the next few episodes are these things with Aaliyah, the character's name, who of course is Jentora from Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'd said in the past, like, hey, if we're not going to see that character again, let's recast her as Cara Dune, because that actor is fantastic. Well, it looks like we are going to see a lot more of her now, which I'm very happy about here. But we'll talk more in depth kind of about their story, her dynamic with Dr. Pershing as we go along here. To me, while I do think that my enjoyment would have been increased if they spread that storyline out along a few episodes, I kind of feel like, well, we needed to see, hey, what is this amnesty housing? How does this system work? She's been in the middle of building her way through it, and she has a lot of different angles that she's building between as well.
Agent Carlos said on in the chat on the Salam Nerds podcast last night that it felt like, and I completely agree with this, by the way, it felt like in a story where you're telling your story and then you kind of forgot a little part of it, so you have to backtrack and say, hey, by the way, this happened, and then keep telling your story. That's what this episode felt like. TJ, I think you're right on the money in terms of they couldn't have spread this out because, oh no, we need to be at a certain spot next week. And we had to have seen all of this to get there. So let's just smush it in between 2 pretty awesome sequences, and then forget about it. That's what it feels like. And I'm not saying like that was their goal, but that's the impression that I'm left with. That's the vibe that I feel after watching this episode. The entire time I'm watching the Pershing, like, Kane stuff, I'm like, damn, I wish I was watching Mando right now. And I think, like Adam says this almost verbatim in his review, I think you failed as story writers if that's what you're thinking.
I want to say, do you not think then that given how short the Grogu and Din stories are, do you not think that indicates that maybe they can't sustain a show as long as, like, those 2 together can't sustain a show as long as people expect them to be able to, so they have to fill in the time with side plots that don't really matter, because those 2 alone storyline needs to wait for Ahsoka to come out maybe, or the second season of Boba Fett. And I think it's indicative of the Book of Boba Fett as well turned into Mandalorian season 2.5, because his story alone can't sustain an entire show. So do you not think that's a problem with Star Wars in general rather than just this episode?
I think all of the stories in this era of Star Wars are all for the purpose of explaining the gap in between the movie trilogies, and like how the last time we see, you know, Palpatine and Darth Vader and everything, like the Empire is destroyed, and then, you know, we come back and there's this new First Order, and we're like, how did we fall into this fascism again in such a quick amount of time? And all of these stories are to explain that, essentially. I think that was the original goal, and everything else is we'll make it up on the way. Do I think that's a problem with Star Wars? I mean, no, not necessarily. I think they're not the only ones that do it. I just think they fall more so.
Worst, though.
In your opinion, yeah, maybe.
That's the thing. I do think that is a reasonable kind of like viewpoint to take of I'm struggling of how I want to word this, but like for the MCU and the Star Wars universe right now, they kind of need to be looked at like comic book series more so than movies, more so than just TV shows, because of how much they're kind of connecting and filling throughout the way. And I feel like it's important to note that like that won't be for everyone. I love that. I think that's so much fun. I love the connectivity. That's kind of, I've talked about this all the time with like growing up on the Marvel animated TV shows with Spider-Man and X-Men. They're always interacting with each other. They're bringing Daredevil in. They're bringing the Fantastic Four in. Captain America pops by. Iron Man from his TV show pops in. I just love that so much. And so now when I kind of finally get those things on screen, I love it. But that type of storytelling, I don't think will be for everyone as well. I do want to take things back a little bit to the first part of the episode, though, because Bo-Katan, who's going to be a heavy part of this season, she's been through a lot. You know, she's got her home blown up right at the beginning of this one.
Bombed twice by the Empire.
Yeah.
Her home's been bombed twice by the Empire.
Her home's been bombed twice by the Empire. That sucks big time. We'll touch more on that later, but one of the things I thought this episode did so well was the visuals. The visuals, the set pieces in this episode, from Coruscant to their space fight on the moons of Mandalore. I thought that was incredible. Mo, what did you think of the kind of classic Star Wars, we're going to fly through the air and shoot each other moments?
The least favorite part of the episode for him.
Yes.
How did I know?
No, I just... Oh, God. Go to someone else, because I can't answer this seriously. Like, oh, God, Sirius just think I'm saying something now.
That was great. That was great. Garrett,
no,
what did you
No. I can answer it. I can answer it.
Okay.
I thought that I'm glad we didn't get more of them in the episode. I think it was... I just find that it, like, if Star Wars doesn't have anything interesting to do, it's just like pew pew, and it's like they will actively put someone in a dangerous situation if the script can't sustain good dialogue for longer than 10 minutes. They'll say, "Okay, you know what? Let's have this character go fly away somewhere."
That is such a reductive statement, as if Star Wars is just 0% about fun action. It's
what if you like
Star Wars
pew
or the plot? Yeah, that's what you're saying.
No, but I watched
Star Wars for the tax laws.
Yeah, exactly.
No, well,
thank you, TJ. That's the equivalent.
No, I'm
the
so
tax laws
interested
of the blockades.
You know what? I am really interested when they said that. What was it? Coruscant was a global city. That shit had my ears pricked up. I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. How does that work economically with everything? Are they like city states? It's the entire planet?"
I agree with you that is interesting. That was my favorite part of Andor. I love that. Why can't both of them be awesome? Why does the pew pew have to be like an indictment on the quality of this?
Well, because it's
franchise.
It's sort of like a Hail Mary that they throw every single project.
Is
it's
it?
Like, pretty much.
Is it just Star Wars? That's like getting mad at a Marvel movie for having too much fighting. Like, okay, like this wasn't going to be the Teletubby movie at any point in time where there's going to be conflict. There's going to be a pew pew pew.
Well, yeah, but how revolutionary, or like you don't have to choreograph a pew 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 scene. You have to choreograph some of the fights.
The one thing, the choreography of this week's pew 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 scene was one of my favorite aspects of it.
Yeah, agreed.
From the way Bo-Katan handled her ship, using half of it, flying it out of the way to rip back the other way to shoot the.
It was Space Top Gun.
It was.
Oh my god! Stop trying to make it better for me, because that does not make it better.
Oh, I knew you would hate that.
My favorite aspect of the
Make no mistake.
Favorite aspect of the entire fight was when she turns to R5 and she's just like, "Hey, I've been flying these cliffs my entire life." and just her using the terrain to her advantage. I love that so much. But to me, the biggest takeaway from that scene was, why are there so many damn people after her? Why is the Empire devoting so many resources to blow up her house? Why is the Empire devoting so many resources to... I originally thought it was to go after Dinjarin, but then when they were just so readily available to blow up her house, that kind of switched things for me. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway from that entire fight was, why are they so concerned with blowing Bo out of the water here?
I think it's
Does
Moff
anyone have
Gideon.
any-
I think
You
it's
think
Moff
it's
Gideon.
Moff?
I do think it's
Mo?
Moff Gideon. Yeah.
How about you?
Sure. Okay, whatever Garrett said.
Oh,
no,
oh
no, no.
my gosh.
It's a question that I didn't have kind of into the episode because I was like, this is so stupid. 'Cause it was-
I'll
'cause it-
I'll
'cause it
throw
just-
back
it-
to you more for the Dr. Pershing and Coruscant stuff, but
Please,
Garrett, we
yes, I
talked
can
about
talk about
this.
that for hours.
Garrett, I want to talk a little bit about when Bo-Katan and Din return to the Mandalorian Death Watch group. And this is something I was talking about a little bit yesterday as well, that in terms of just this group when we were seeing, and they get redeemed, they don't believe Bo, they don't believe Din, they show them the water, yay, they believe now, everybody's happy. Obviously, the armorer, Paz Vizsla, very extremist Death Watch, right? Like they kind of embody what Death Watch is. But the more I kind of see this large group as a whole, I kind of feel like there's a lot more Dinjarans in there than there are Paz Vizslas. I kind of feel like this is more just like, hey, our entire planet is gone. Our entire planet got blown to shreds by the Empire. We can't go there anymore. We believe it's cursed. The only thing holding us together are the old ways. I feel like there's a lot more of that than as opposed to, hey, we are Death Watch. We're trying to take our way or the highway kind of thing. I could be wrong. We'll see more of this. I think sort of Paz and the armor leading into the antagonist role as the series goes on, but I don't know necessarily if that'll be the case from the whole group.
No, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a reason to suspect that. The Death Watch were, make no mistake about it, domestic terrorists who committed atrocities. The children of the Watch, as far as I know, live pretty secretly, and they just take like on bounties to survive. So I don't think there's any outwardly malicious things there. However, I do think that's only has something to do with, you know, and in terms of the higher ups, the leadership, and that's to talk about the armorers, the Paz Vizslas. I think it's more of a necessity. Like, we have to lay low right now. We don't have a planet. We don't have, like, we're only us 15, you know, give or take. Obviously it's growing a bit. We've seen that it's grown from season to season, but I don't necessarily think it's because the people at the top are good people, just more so that they have to survive. I think Paz Vizsla is I would assume a direct descendant of the Vizslas that we know in the Clone Wars, who are the heads of Death Watch when these
Are the worst.
when said atrocities occur and are planned and are enacted and everything. So I think we can expect him, Paz Vizsla, to take a pretty central villainous point, if not the armor. But yeah, I would agree with you that the general group is probably less so aware of the history of the group, and more so just like, oh wow, these are people like me, and they're not, like I said, they're not like outwardly committing any horrible acts, so these people would have no reason to suspect like shadiness. That's kind of my mindset.
I think that makes sense. And the last thing I want to talk about from this intro before we dive into the kind of second act of the episode is the Mythosaur. Obviously, the mythosaur is so crucial to Mandalorian history. Some thought it was myth. Some believed it was ever so crucial. Pulls Din Djarin into the water in the last episode. Bo-Katan saves him. He gets knocked out. Doesn't even remember it. Has no recollection of this whatsoever. And Bo-Katan goes out of her way to just kind of flush this down, not talk about it. She knows how big of a deal this is. This kind of shook a lot of her beliefs. This kind of reminds me a lot of that scene in Black Panther Wakanda Forever where they're like, wait, there's vibranium outside of Wakanda. Like, that goes against everything that I believe. Like, I kind of, we always thought it was here. And then the opposite of that kind of happened with Bo-Katan. She's like, wait, this stuff actually is true. These myths were real. And she knows the impact of the mythosaur. She knows the symbolicness of symbolism there. That's the word I'm looking for. The symbolism of what defeating the mythosaur means. Symbolicness isn't a word. Garrett, why'd she shut this down? Why didn't she tell him about it? And why is this something she's keeping to herself?
I said this on the pod last week, and I kind of misspoke when I said it, but I said, I think Bo-Katan is scheming a little bit, and I kind of said it when we were talking about her in the castle, and Rachel was like, no, man, she's depressed. Like, she's depressed. And I was like, yeah, I can agree with that sentiment, but I think more so in the terms of, like, when we saw them in the mines of Mandalore and everyone's like, is she going to take the Darksaber? Is she not? We even had to talk about this, TJ, about, like, she's more of a honorable person and she knows the lore and the history of this weapon. So she knows she's just going to give it back to him. And so she sets it there. But I think it's more than that. I think we have also talked in the past about her character development and how much better of a person she's become since we saw her in the Clone Wars. And while that's true, I still think she's incredibly smart. She's always gotten out of some pretty sticky situations. And I think she's always scheming a bit in the back of her head. So whether it's giving the Darksaber or giving the Darksaber back, but, just acting like she had never used it, I think there's intent behind that. Keeping the mythosaur a secret, I think there's intent behind that as well. She knows that she can use these things to her advantage in the future. And while right now it kind of plays off as she's just being a nice person, I don't think she's just being a nice person. I think she has ulterior motives. I think she's very cunning. And that's not to say these motives are, like, evil, but I think, she's got a plan.
What if she's just trying to spare his feelings?
I don't think that that's what she's trying to do.
I don't know, maybe.
That's a possibility, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Me, personally, I don't subscribe to that.
Well,
Bo-Katan don't give a damn about anybody's feelings. I don't think she's pretty straight to the point. I do think throughout the season, we've talked about it a little bit, we're going to see the two of their beliefs, mindsets kind of become closer together by the end of this. I don't think they are going to be antagonizing each other. I think they're going to be on the same team come the end of this. I do think it was interesting that the season opened on a young Mandalorian getting his helmet, because I do think that is going to be how this season ends, is Grogu getting his helmet. And I think that is going to be a very serious contemplation for Din Djarin and his loyalty to the Children of the Watch, because we know he doesn't take that helmet off for himself. He doesn't take that helmet off for anybody. Who does he take that helmet off for? It's Grogu. And so when push comes to shove and he has to decide whether or not he wants, and he thinks Grogu wants to be indoctrined into this life, to never take off that helmet, to live by the way, I think that could be what actually pulls him away from it, is him deciding, like, no, Grogu has his own path. He can't be following in this path. But we'll touch more on that as the season goes. That's just kind of an early theory I have here. Let's go towards the Aaliyah and Dr. Pershing stuff in Coruscant. I have some theories from the opening set of it in terms of cloning. Dr. Pershing, of course, was working on cloning for Moff Gideon. Um, why doesn't the New Republic want him to use any of it? I kind of want to save my far-fetched theories for the very end and allow the two of you to kind of just give your thoughts on that segment of the episode. So Mo, I'll throw it to you first. We open with Dr. Pershing explaining his research.
Yeah.
And then we see the amnesty housing from there and kind of that whole story. What did you think about the transition, and what were some of
Yeah,
your highlights?
I thought his TED talk was really nice. It was it was quite I thought it was quite engaging because it explains a little bit about it's yeah, it depending on his sort of motivations. I don't like right, my thoughts are all over the place on this. Basically, I liked pretty much the whole piece with him and his story and finding out where he's at because I didn't think he was evil, but I thought it didn't want to kind of touch the fascism themes that I believe Andor did quite well from what I saw about it. So it sort of just skirted around that, and I wish they'd gone a little bit deeper into it. But at the end of it, it did all sort of feel like, no, he really wants to research it for good purposes, but because like they had this idea that he hadn't changed because he wanted to carry on the research. And so I sort of felt like he was double crossed a little bit, like on purpose, rather than it just
I
being like
I
a
could see
fluke
that for
thing.
sure, but I just want to say I did not get the vibe that he's to me he seems like an addict. Like he doesn't realize that it's not gonna it there was not good intentions, there was no intentions. It was I need to do this. Like I need to continue my stuff. I didn't really see like yeah, he's talking about it's under the guise of this is gonna be for good intentions, but I at zero times in the episode thought, oh yeah, this guy wants to help people.
Well, I did. So no, well, yeah, no, that's
So fuck
I
you,
kind of did.
man.
I thought it was I don't know. I kind of like the Shutter Island twist to it a little bit because it was like it's like you sort of follow on these people that you think they're friends and then they're not really friends, and one of them it's like it's all like a big game. I quite like that element to it. It was a different genre to what we usually see in Star Wars, so I thought that part of it was carried out. Like there was a sense of ambiguity there, like it wasn't clear cut, and I also like the ending of it. She was chomping down on those biscuits, those delicious uh dry biscuits. Um, like what? Like is she still evil, or does the program not really work at all?
Both of those things.
This
Exactly.
is
So it's like,
yeah, like it opens so many doors to showing how the New Republic turns back into the First Order. And this is kind of in terms of the motivations behind everything. He's obviously showing he's obviously trying to say like, hey, I want to do my cloning stuff. I want to do my cloning stuff. And throughout this episode, it gets shut down at every turn. And the way they're kind of trying to enforce on all the people, no, we're anti-imperial everything, anti-imperial technology. We don't use this stuff anymore. Blah 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 blah. And then of course at the end they're using the what's it called, Garrett?
The 602 mitigator.
The 602 mitigator, of course, not the mind flare, um, which is of course imperial technology, and that made me really think kind of this is classic fascism is I'm going to do these things, you're not allowed to do these things, this stuff is illegal because we're doing this stuff in the shadows, and we're going to like hammer down on it in public so that we can keep our research a secret. And I think Carlos Carlos was just on fire in the chat for the live stream we were on the other day, because he brought up another really good point in terms of when he was coming out of his TED talk, the way the aristocrats basically just had no care or no really recollection of like, New Republic, Empire, rebels, what does it matter to me as long as my pockets are filled, am I right? Ha ha ha. That's
I just thought that was really camp, and Star Wars doesn't do camp well. So
I thought
when
it was really meta too. I think it was also like it can be hard to. We just made a new empire in the New Republic, and it can be hard to follow the factions of the rebels and the whatever and the resistance and it's. I think it was all of those things at once. That is one of the great things of the episode that I'm talking about, which is why I hate that I didn't like this episode.
Well,
to me, Mo,
you got to honor the camp. You got
all of the things you said about the episode were right, and the Shutter Island-esque, and like it could have. But to me, the payoff, none of it works because I was never at any point invested in the story because 100% of the time they're war criminals. These people are war criminals. So I never at one point felt sorry for them, and I felt like the episode really tried to get me to feel sorry for them. They're war criminals. I never once felt sorry for them. I always was keeping an eye on them. They were war criminals who were trying to continue to do the things that they were the reasons that they were war criminals, and they were trying to do them in secret under the guise of this is a good thing. So I never once felt bad for them. The stakes were never high for me. I hope they got caught almost. Like what? I'm not rooting for these people, and they tried to make me think that I was. So none of the payoffs really worked for me. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Everyone in Star Wars is a war criminal. Like, literally everyone in Star Wars is a war criminal. If you're going to start having morals about a guy who wants to do a little bit of cloning, then you watched Kenobi just so you could see the guy that killed like a shit ton of kids and choked his wife to death so that she gave birth early.
No, I didn't watch Kenobi for Darth Vader.
So many people did, though. So don't start having morals about a guy that wants to do a little bit of duplication, right? Let's not.
I think, but there is okay.
No.
But Darth Vader is really cool with the pew pews.
Exactly. See, because everyone likes all the pew pew people. They got all the clout. No one for the.
There is a difference between war criminals on the Empire side and the not Empire side. Just to be clear, though, right?
I mean,
the intent matters. Also, or are we saying the intent doesn't matter? I just want to clear that up because, in my opinion, the intent matters.
No, it doesn't. Because everyone in Star Wars, everyone in Star Wars is a war criminal.
Everyone in Star Wars is a war criminal. Okay, that's a really bold statement. Only Sith steal in absolutes. That's all I'll say.
Right. Well, it doesn't really matter.
Got me there. He said, "Got me there." Where was I? I do think the parts with the aristocrats was so, like, I think meta, like you said, Garrett, in the way that it's like, think of the amount of people in the United States where it's like, yeah, they're going to donate to campaigns for the Republicans. They're going to donate to campaigns for the Democrats. They don't care who wins as long as they don't have to pay their taxes. And it just kind of like, you look at it from the oil industries, they're going to pump different people on both sides, and as long as their people from that side gets in, they're happy. And that's kind of the same vibe I got from those guys here. Taking it back to the end of this, that act 2 of the episode, though, what's it called again, Garrett?
The 602 mitigator.
The 602 mitigator, thank you. This is where the part of the episode that threw me off the most, that gave me kind of fulfilled those. I feel like the Shutter Island vibes are still kind of carrying on till next week, because I can't figure out what her goal is here. She's double agenting with the New Republic. She's being a snitch. She's seeing who's still, she's trying to work her way up the ranks of the New Republic so that she can see, I don't know, work her way up. And so she's being a snitch to work her way up. But then when he is in the 602 mitigator, she flips it all the way up to Mind Flayer mode and fries his brain, erasing all of this cloning stuff from his memory. Presumably, we don't know for sure, but presumably based on what we know that stuff has capability of doing. Why? That's what I don't get. Why? Because, like, if she's on the side of the Empire, don't they want this dude to help complete the cloning process? We know they're all about their cloning, which we'll get into a little bit more after. Why are we just absolutely frying this dude? Why set him up just to fry him? What's her ulterior motive?
I think the answer lies with Moff Gideon. That's their connection. That's what connects the two of those characters. I think that's what we have to look towards for the answer.
But so do you think I can't remember her name because but Katie O'Brien, do you think that she is still working for Moff Gideon?
I think it's possible, yeah.
Then that kind of always just brings me back to, though, why fry his brain and not just bring him back to Moff Gideon?
Because it's maybe because he's got the best chance of redemption. So if they were to like fry his brain or something, then it means he wouldn't remember any of the cloning stuff and he couldn't pass along the secrets or like reveal what they were trying to do.
Yeah, it could be that, I think. Or it's I need him to be like docile so he can continue
pick apart his brain,
continue the work for me, kind of thing. I think it makes sense that the New Republic becomes the First Order. We know that, so I think it makes sense to start having like old era. It does, yeah.
Oh, how do we know that?
Because we've seen the sequel trilogy.
Okay, cool. Not everyone watches everything as intensely as you do, Garrett.
No, not everyone has seen, the third biggest piece of Star Wars media, but whatever, fuck.
That's kind of what this comes back to.
Excuse me for assuming.
In the 9th movie, right, is somehow Palpatine returns. What is such a big plot hole at the time now kind of comes back to, well, they have to fill it retroactively. And so
it makes sense to have Imperial era spies in the New Republic.
I kind of get the vibe he's still out there either pulling the strings or they're trying to figure out this cloning process to fully revive him and somebody else is pulling the strings to make that happen.
Yeah.
TJ, at this point in the timeline, he's chilling in Fortnite.
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
I think he's back like on the behind of somebody's head like Professor Quirrell in the first Harry Potter. Like that's kind of how I'm picturing right now. He's just like hanging on somewhere and like orchestrating things from the shadows. Like that's my Palpatine vibe right now. And that kind of takes me back to this cloning. All of this cloning. Moff Gideon wanted Grogu for the purpose of cloning. In the Bad Batch right now, they are knee deep in explaining various cloning storylines and going back to Camino and how this and why the Empire is after this information, and all roads lead back to Palpatine. I do think it's very interesting that like that's kind of why I don't get like unless I'm just wrong on like it won't be erasing his mind thing. Like that's kind of why it comes back to me is like why didn't they just steal him? Take him to the place and steal him as opposed to taking him to the place and then bringing him back to the New Republic.
Well, I kind of feel like anyone in the amnesty program would be on like super high alert because they're kind of a prisoner. So it would be like trying to break a prisoner out of prison, which if you've got a guard's help, yeah, fine. But then you're also exposing all the other guards to be investigated. So
it's just when they're on that ship, though, all they had to do is pick him up in another ship.
I think it has something to do with
pew.
He needs to like, because at the beginning of the episode he's like, I don't know, it's not right to leave the area, we're these amnesty people, and then it goes on, and then he's like, you know what, I do need to continue. Like he needs to make the like choice for himself kind of to start on that path, and then when she screws up his mind, maybe like having him make that choice is gonna show what path he chooses in the future or something. I don't know. There's a lot of, when you get to like messing with someone's mind, there's narratively a lot of things that you can do with it.
I'm excited to learn more because I'm under the impression right now that he's just going to be a limp meat bag going forward and there's not going to be anything else going on in there. I want to know who she's working for, whether it's Moff Gideon or someone else inside of the New Republic who is on the side of the Imperials trying to bring this back, turn it into the First Order. That's one of the kind of highlights for me going in, is like, I don't know what it's going to do. I'm very interested. That's one of the reasons why I was more invested by the end of this episode than I was throughout the story, was I want to learn who Aaliyah, Katie O'Brien / Shantora is working for. You know, I want to know who she's involved with. I want to know how they're showing us for a reason, right? So I want to know how this is going to come back and interact with Din Djarin, Grogu, and Bo-Katan by the end of the episodes. I do think so much of, just based on the Bad Batch and now this episode, what it has turned into with it, with our little TED Talk, I do think cloning is going to be a big focus for season 3, and potentially learning more about that. And I think the other main focus leading into the end of season 3 is going to be Grogu's path. Is it Jedi? Is it Mandalorian? Is it somewhere in between?
It's both.
And it's both. Director Rick Famuyiwa talks about how the definitions are not as important. He has both of these skills. He's walking both of these paths, but the definition itself isn't important, as the story is just about a kid and his dad and them figuring out their own way. You can find that interview up on agentsofandom.com, as well as the Agents of Fandom YouTube page. This will be up wherever you get your podcasts. We didn't go live this week because Thursday, as we're recording this tonight, I am going to Shazam, and then I got to write a nice late night review to get that one up on the website as well. And then if you want podcast coverage of Shazam, that's not going to be us. They're covering it over at the Fandom Academy podcast, as well as the Listen 3000 podcast. So make sure to check that out as well. Mo, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can the people find you?
Just Twitter. Don't go looking around anywhere else, because I take no responsibility for what you find if you search my name. But
and
yeah, just Twitter, Mo from Streamer, or Streamer News, at Streamer News, yeah.
At Streamer News, at Mo from Streamer, thestreamer.com, and
STREAMR, by the way.
No E.
Thank you.
Exactly. No E. Why,
cool,
before we get out of here, talk to us a little bit about what Streamer is. Why did you start it? When did you start it? How did you get this great group of people together you have over there going? Tell us about Streamer.
This is an on-the-spot interview. It's just focusing on the content that you find on streaming services, or I think we're doing some cinema releases now because most of them have got like a guaranteed streaming home. So we wanted to go and see things on the big screen as well. So yeah, and it's operating over different time zones. Got UK writers, US writers, a couple based in India, one guy in Hong Kong. They might be the same person, but lots of people everywhere.
That seems like something to unpack there, but we can get into that at another time.
Yeah, no, I think because I'm fairly sure we've got people everywhere, and try and tailor the coverage locally.
We are big fans of your team and your outlet. It is something I consider to be like a sister outlet to ours. So you guys go follow the Streamer News. Check out their articles in addition to ours. They have some great team members over there doing some awesome work, so you can check out their work. Of course, check out Mo at Mo from Streamer on Twitter. Mo, love talking to you, buddy. Thanks for coming on. It's super exciting for me to be able to, like, this worked out super randomly, but we actually got you on for an episode of Star Wars that you like. I don't know if I've ever heard you say that before, so even if I didn't like it, it's exciting to talk to you about you liking it.
I think, and I don't know. I really enjoyed the episode. Like, it made me want to watch the next one. Like, actually be excited for it. Like, wake up at the time to watch it, so I can watch it and be a part of it. So it's fine. It's also, we're getting to 1 year since I first appeared on this.
It is very, very close to 1 year from us meeting, which was during the Moon Knight coverage, which is pretty huge for
Oh.
both of our sites. So congrats on our 1 year anniversary, guys, or nearing
Happy
our
1
1 year
year.
anniversary. Happy 1 year.
Happy 1 year.
Happy 1 year. Absolutely love to see it. Time for level 7 lockup. Make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom on all the socials. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any content. You can find all the shows on the Agents of Fandom podcast network, like Fandom Academy, Ticket to Reality, Listen 3000, The Critics, and of course us, the Agents of Fandom podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your pods. Check out the agentsoffandom.com/store to hit that little store tab on the website for awesome merch. We're not wearing it today like we usually are, but I mean, sometimes you have to do laundry every now and then. Otherwise, you get very stinky. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will see you next week. Peace.
Peace.